Yes, indeed, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the First Class, Second Place podcast. I'm your host, Jason Enrique, and we got another First Class guest up in the building today. But before we continue, I want to remind everybody that we are live from Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey. Shout out to Marv beyond the glass. Good to see you, brother. Always a pleasure. So, ladies and gentlemen, we have another First Class guest up in the building today. Now, I've been looking forward to this for quite some time. This is a person I've heard on the radio waves for many years, and I've been very fortunate now to have him on my show. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Gordon Damer in the building. What is going on, Gordon?
Jason, what's going on, pal? How are you?
I'm doing good, man. So before we continue, I gotta say something real quick, and it's also gonna be followed by a question. So this is kind of tongue in cheek, but people here at Bravery Studios in Garfield, New Jersey, another plug I want to say by the way, they like to joke around a little tongue in cheek that I have the best hair at Bravery Studios, but then I look at somebody like you and you have amazing fucking hair. Excuse my language, but I gotta know what exactly do you use, because I feel like I need some of that.
Well, the first thing I'll say, and this is actually something that's close to my heart. Probably about 10 years, 12 years ago now, I wiped out shampoo. I do not shampoo my hair one bit. Water is enough to clean my hair, so that's a big one for me. I just simply blow dry it, and then I get I fool around with a lot of different products right now. I'm not sure which one this one is. It's like, but this is like cheap off the shelf of the local Dwayne Reed or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's not fancy product. I think I'm just working with like good stock. You know?
Yeah, well, honestly, I could be a little tongue in cheek. Maybe it's good that you're not in studio today, because I think I would have some competition as far as hair is concerned. But
Well, look, mine's all gray though. You still got the nice jet black hair. You know?
yeah, I mean, don't worry, I'll get there. One day, man. I'm fucking not that. I'm trailing right behind you. But anyway, Gordon, that's one of the reasons why I was looking forward to bringing you on, because you, one of the things that I appreciate you about as a sports commentator and everything is that you have razor sharp wit. You don't take yourself too seriously, but like at the end of the day, you're just real. That's the one word that I could say overall when it comes to, and especially in the industry where there's a lot of frauds and a lot of fakes and people that are in it for the wrong reasons. I think that your personality and I like the cut of your jib. I think that's why I really aspire and also admire people like you, Don LaGreca, a whole bunch of other people that you know as well. But we'll get into all of that in the future later on. So I just want to start from the beginning. So I understand that you're a New York native. You were born in Queens, raised in Long Island. Where did your love of sports begin as far as that's concerned, growing up in New York?
You know, it's one of those things where as you're a kid, I think you just kind of just know sports are always around. I can't tell you that there was like one specific moment that opened my eyes to sports or anything like that. I just was raised by, my father was kind of into sports. My father was an immigrant from Scotland and came to America and loved anything that was American. So he loved baseball, first of all. So I got into baseball as a little kid. Now, I don't know if it's my Scottish upbringing or what it is, but there's always like, you have like a contrarian point of view. That's at least what I have. So when my father was a Met fan, I became a Yankee fan. He became a Jet fan. I became a Dolphin fan. So we're always kind of giving it to each other. But in terms of where my love of sports from, I think it's just always around. And then as you get into it and as you start to learn about it, especially you have somebody who you look up to, like a parent or an older brother, and they're into it, that gets you into it. So I can't say that there's one light bulb moment for me, but it's just always kind of been there.
Yeah, no, and I get where you're coming from, and maybe I should have worded it differently. And you kind of basically explained what I was going at, because it's similar with me. Like, my first experience with sports, professional sports, so to speak, was the New York Knicks. I mean, I was born in 1986, so I'm naturally a 90s baby, a 90s kid. And, Patrick Ewing and all of those guys, those were my heroes. My father would look forward to watching MSG games all the time, and I just wanted to be there just to bond with him. And that's when I really fell in love with basketball. Now, basketball was my first love as far as sports is concerned. And then afterwards, the Yankees got hot in the late 90s, and I really got into them. My brother was the biggest Derek Jeter fan of all time. And as far as football, I really didn't get into, like, I unfortunately chose the New York Jets because a cousin of mine that I love dearly, he's the biggest Mets, Jets, Nets fan of all time. Like, if you wear the pinstripes around him, he gags. That's how much he hates them.
You have not cut this guy out of your life? I mean, really, you should probably think about it. I mean, I don't want to, I know it's Thanksgiving and all, but I think that maybe you might have to reevaluate some things.
I'm surprised he hasn't cut me out of his life, me being a Yankee fan. But But no, for me, and ironically, this is where you and I might, might get a little squabble here, just jokingly, is where I really solidified my Jet fandom on the Monday Night Miracle. Like I always said that I was a Jets fan, but that's the day that I took it seriously. And here's the kicker, Gordon. Here's the kicker. I was actually living in Miami when that happened. So I was able to get the last laugh, and that really solidified my fandom as a Jet fan, but unfortunately it hasn't aged well. As
You haven't been doing too much laughing lately, that's for sure.
if I laugh, it's to keep from crying. That's what I've been doing.
Yeah.
Well, look, there was no winning side on that because the Dolphins. I always say this all the time. Dolphins are not that much removed from the Jets. I mean, the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game, Peyton Manning was in the second season, so they've not exactly been a banner organization either.
But you know what? One thing that I appreciate about you saying that, Gordon, is the fact that I know a shitload of Dolphin fans. Because as I mentioned, I went to high school down in Florida, in Miami specifically, and I was surrounded by Dolphin fans. And even still to this day, I have not met one person, with the exception of you, that is not delusional. Like you are the only one that has actually kept it real, but they're in this aura where they feel delusional. Like, all right, as soon as Ryan Tannehill had like he won the first 3 games of the season, they were automatically assumed that they were going to the Super Bowl. It happens every single year, and they just keep on getting disappointed. But that's their problem, not mine.
I don't know these people that you're talking about. I'm assuming they're significantly younger than me. They have not been beaten down by life the way that I have as a Dolphin fan. So I would say within the next 10 years, assuming nothing dramatically changes, and with the Dolphins, nothing ever dramatically changes, they'll start to have a reckoning where they realize they have wasted their football life like I have.
Well, I always like to say I thank God for the Yankees and the Devils because they're the only ones that have given me hope as far as championships concerned. I used to say that the Jets will probably win a Super Bowl before the Knicks ever win a championship, but now it looks like it's flipped on its side. I don't know if that's going to be. I'm almost like Joe Beningo, where I feel like I'm never going to see a Jets Super Bowl in my life, but we'll see.
Yeah, I think you have to go into it at a certain age, realizing that not everybody who becomes a fan gets to see their team win. And once you make that acceptance, any success is a bonus.
Audience that are not very well versed in sports, I want to get back to you a little bit more where so we got a little bit into our fandom, but that also led into you making it into a career. Now, just like you, I went to college also where I was trying to go for a BA in communications, but unfortunately I was a college dropout. I didn't know necessarily what I wanted to do with it. I just know that I had an affinity for TV and radio ever since I was very, very young, and I figured that was the way to go. And truth be honest, truth be told, I never probably should have gone to college in the first place because there's just people out there that school is for them and school is not. And I just happen to be part of the latter. And there has been stories of people that have been able to make it in the industry without having that quote unquote proper education. But, that's not to say that people shouldn't get an education. But the point that I'm getting at is that when I was going into communications, I just figured I would go for it and then see where it would take me. Is it safe to say that when you went for your communications, your BA communications, that it was strictly going into sports broadcasting?
I mean, when I went to college, the first year of college, I was just liberal arts. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I had heard that somebody was offering a sports broadcasting class at St. John's. So that kind of appealed to me because I was already a sports fan. I was already doing that anyway, whether or not I was doing a show or not, just my life. So that's what appealed to me. And then I got into it and I realized that's what I really love to do. But I feel like back then there was much more of you kind of had to kind of go to college to be successful or to have a platform. There was much more gatekeeping back then where you had to get a job to be able to have the ability to do the task. Now, obviously here, you don't need to have that background to be able to do the task. It's just go do the task and you can do podcasts, you can do whatever you want and kind of approach it that way. And it's not so much gatekeeping anymore. It's whoever is the best can do it.
What is your take on that? Because you come from old school where you just described how, you had to go to have an education to be successful and do all of these things. And now it's kind of, anybody can do it now with podcasting and just even with their own equipment. Like, does that have like a little bit of a raw feeling to it? Like, do you feel like they kind of takes the passion away from it? Or do you think that this is just the new norm and it doesn't faze you one bit?
It doesn't really faze me that much. Because at the end of the day, it's on you, right? Like back then you had to convince sometimes one person, right? The person that was doing the hiring. Now it's kind of a more fair playing field where you have to convince the audience. You have to be able to build an audience. So if you're able to convince all those people, to me, that's a far better barometer than back when I was doing it and I had to convince one person that I could do the job. So I think it's a little bit more now. It's over. The amount of people trying to do it is overwhelming, and maybe that might keep people from trying. But at the end of the day, there's always going to be challenges, and now the challenge is just different. But I think it's a more fair challenge.
I know that you're also a father. Any chance that your children might be interested in following in your footsteps?
No, I mean my kids are not really into sports. My son is kind of into it. He loves UFC. He still is dreaming of being a UFC fighter, which we are convincing him, no, that's not what you're going to be doing. Um, but he doesn't really have the passion for sports, and I think that that's the biggest thing you have to have. Of all the abilities, uh, talking on camera, all these different abilities that you have to be good at in the industry. The number one thing I think you have is you have to have passion, because without passion, you're not going to stick with it long. You won't stick with it long enough to be successful. And it's almost like you have to have such a passion that you can't imagine doing something else.
Right, and that's not even just with sports. I feel like that's with all facets of life. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you right now, and I apologize once again to my audience for bringing this up ad nauseum. But I've this project, this podcast that I'm doing right now, has probably been the most consistent thing that I've ever done in my life, because I've tried to do so many things and tried so many avenues when I was younger. I couldn't find my footing, and admittedly, there was some things that I did that were out of. I did it for the wrong reasons. Like, yeah, I either did it for money, for fame, whatever the case may be, and it just never worked out. And now I finally have found something that I absolutely enjoy. And I love everything that has been able to come to me as far as like, you know, uh, uh, having a voice out there and so on and so forth. But the point that I'm getting at is I finally found out at my late age of 38, go earlier at 36, that this is the one thing that I stay consistent with, and I'm going to stay consistent with. And I'm just hoping that people can really take that and appreciate it. And I want to be an example for others as well, to see that anybody can do it. Like, if a person that is as self-deprecating as me in a joking fashion can do this, anybody else can.
Well, I mean, but you have to have the stick to itiveness, right? Like as you said, if you get into it thinking, "Oh, I'm going to draw these big numbers, I'm going to make six figures right away," or anything like that, you're probably in it for the wrong reasons. And if that's the reason why you're going to go into it, there's a thousand things. Like if making a lot of money is your number one goal, you're better off doing something else, because the chances of you know doing that are slim, and it can't be the singular focus. That's not going to be the enough of a why for you to keep doing it when the tough times hit, right? When you're not doing big numbers, or there's obstacles, or a guest drops out at the last minute. You need to have a really strong why you're doing it, and then you'll figure out the how.
Right. And in some ways, I kind of feel like I actually have thought about, a little bit spoiler alert for my audience as well, that I'm actually thinking about starting a sports only podcast going into 2025. But we'll get there when we cross that bridge. But the point that I'm getting at here is, it's almost like I'm almost glad that I have, like, we're in a time now where you can kind of do it on your own, because I feel like, especially in that industry that you're in, it's very cutthroat, even still to this day, but especially back then, where you could be the most talented guy in the world, but if the ratings aren't there, if the numbers aren't there, you're not going to have a very lasting career. I mean, that's just the way it is.
Well, look, now it's on everybody, right? It's on you. All the tools are there, and maybe there's ways that you can manipulate the tools in whatever way to kind of draw bigger numbers or to get an audience quicker. But at the end of the day, it's all the same tools. You have to have something inside of you that is relatable to people, so and connects with people. Now that could be a million different things. It could be entertaining. It could be informative. It could be a lot of different things. But at the end of the day, it's about figuring out what it is about you that's unique, that people are going to relate to, and use that to the best of your ability.
I'm pretty sure a question that you get all the time from your listeners and so on and so forth is, how what do I have to do? Like, how do I get into the business? This, that, and the fourth. I know that it could probably be an overbearing question, because I know some of other people that are in your industry that get that all the time. But I would just say, what was the most common thing that you would tell them?
Well, I mean, it's completely different than when I started. I started 1,000 years ago. Like I always tell people, the first job I had, a company called Sports Phone, and this sentence that I'm about to say is going to tell you how old I am, because sports phone was a dial-up phone service. You would call up to get the scores before the internet existed. So like I was my first job. I wasn't even like I was born before the internet existed. I was working in my industry before the internet existed. So I'm like an old head that my path is not really going to give anybody who's starting out now real advice about what their path is going to be like. But the good news is, much like I said before, now the desire to do it, if you have that, you can go and match whatever you want because you have the tools at your disposal. And it's almost flipped. Back then, you had to prove you were worthy of the job to be able to draw an audience. Now, I feel like guys starting out, you got to draw an audience. If you want to get hired by someplace, you have to show something that you're bringing to the table, not just ability. You have to have a podcast, you have a Twitter following, something along those lines to show, hey, you know what? Of all the people that are going for this job, I set myself apart because of I got this, I got that, whatever.
I'm a person that has spoken very openly on my show about my mental health struggles and, being open and honest. Transparency is pretty much my number one brand. And I've told people about how I've, the trials and tribulations that I've gone through with starting my platform and trying to get to where I want to go and figure out what I want to do with my life. As far as like when you graduated from college and then started getting your career started, I'm pretty sure that it was a pretty daunting task. I mean, it was like I said, it's a cutthroat business to get into in the first place. What was about those moments back then where there was like a sense of a discouragement and you felt like maybe this isn't going to work, but then afterwards you just kept on going and then ultimately it all worked out. But what about those moments where you just felt like, man, I don't know if this is going to happen after all?
Well, look, the one thing I have going for me is I'm really dumb. I didn't realize, it was so different back then because there was no central place to go to find out about jobs. Everything was like word of mouth. And, oh, by the way, so and so is working here and so and so is working there. So, like, when I had, I didn't really take a moment to think about how this might not work. I might have to go do something else. So I guess maybe just my own naivete was probably my best attribute of sticking through the hard times. But no, I mean, it's clearly there were hard times because you see when you get out of college and you have a college degree and you're not really making a whole lot of money those first few years and all your friends are getting big jobs and buying houses and starting families. It is a daunting thing, but I guess I just never really focused on that aspect of it too much.
No, I love how you put it in the fact that that you said your words that you're dumb, but
Yeah.
I'm certainly not the smartest man in the world, but I just feel like one of the things that has really affected me, especially when I spoke about my mental health struggles in the past, is like my imposter syndrome and the fact of discouragement and just people like I remember a while back, when I very early on where full disclosure, I'm actually into acting now. I'm not just doing podcasting, I'm doing other things as well. But back then, when I told myself that I wanted to do it as an actual career, even though I never really put my foot forward into doing anything of that ilk at the time, I was told straight out flat, like, even by my own parent, I was told that, Jason, just give it up. You're never going to make it to Hollywood. And we joke about it now, but at that time, that shit stung, man. That really, because you would figure that a person from that caliber, from that part of your life is actually going to be your biggest supporter. But, it just, maybe it's just tough love. I don't know what it is. I mean, I'm Hispanic. That's how we love each other. But, ultimately, like what I found out during this entire time of me getting into media, doing this podcast is that, there are going to be naysayers. There are going to be people that are going to be discouragement. There's going to be some jealousy, this, that, and the third, but you can't really let that get you down. And like you mentioned before, if you have that passion, there's not really anything that anybody could tell you that you can't do it.
No, look, I'm sure my parents they didn't maybe say it publicly, but I mean, I'm sure they couldn't have been all that jacked. Me working at sports phone as a 25, 26-year-old guy with college loans to pay back and all this type of things. So, I would say this: if people are able to convince you can't do it, then they're right. Right? If that's all that it takes for you to give up on it, then they're right. So, and if they're not, if it's not enough for you to give up on it, then you're right. Whatever you end up doing, that's the only thing that really matters. It doesn't matter what anybody says or tells you.
Correct. Yeah. Now, as soon as your time at Sports Phone ended, because obviously the internet was blowing up
Right,
and
right.
the industry was dying and everything. So where did you go there from pivoting from Sports Phone to where?
I did sports phone for a while. Then I heard about a place called Shadow Broadcasting, which back in the days do Shadow Traffic, but they also did Shadow Sports for various stations, 1010 Win, WCBS. I used to do the overnights on WFAN, the update there. So I had applied there, eventually got it in there. That was about 96 where I started there. I started sports phone in 93 or 92, somewhere around there. It's all a memory, it's all a fog of memory now. But yeah, 96. I actually started at Shadow game 6 of the 96 World Series. So as a Yankee fan, that's an easy way to remember the first night that I started there.
Yeah, for ESPN New York Tonight, if I'm not mistaken.
No, that was I was working on 1010 Wins at the time. Yeah, ESPN started up. ESPN New York started up in 2001. So I was doing that for 5 years, and then I went to ESPN. And the same guy who hired me at Shadow was doing the hiring at ESPN. So it's all about who you know.
It's all about word of mouth. It's all about who you know.
Mhm.
Yeah. Would you say that you had some of the best times as far as like overnights or even just in the nights? Because I know that I've heard before in the industry that, obviously we want to get to like the afternoon drive. I mean, that's a passion at one point for everybody. But one of the coolest things about working overnights or even in the early nights is that, it's kind of a little bit easier. It's not a corporate environment. You don't have to worry about ratings too much. You can even spend 5 minutes with callers at a time.
It's rushed. Yeah, and especially with ESPN back then, I think I can say this that like nobody from the state, like there were people in management positions that I'm not even sure that they really knew that I was on it over. Like it was pretty low key. Like there was no advertising for the show or anything like that, but it was an opportunity, and I was happy to take it and run with it. And yeah, it's the dream, right? Like, and the best parts of the dream because there was no real interference of, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. We kind of tried things, and sometimes things didn't work. Sometimes segments didn't work. But you got to kind of like try things out on the air and see what did work. And I think more things did work than didn't.
Before we continue, I just want to do a little bit of a sponsorship real quick, and I want to give a shout out to Kyrie Williams for this as well. Ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited for something that I've been working on for weeks. As you all know, I'm the type of person that believes heavily in setting intentions and unlocking creativity. I believe in having a healthy way to release my thoughts and not let my emotions get bottled up. So I will be releasing my very own first class, second place journal. I want you all to go journaling on a journey with me. But Janice will be going out on sale in January, just in time for the new year. Please DM me, text me, or call me so I can make sure to put one side for you and more info to come. Thank you so much to Thriving Stationery for this opportunity. And thank you once again, Kyrie Williams, for making that connection. All right, back to you, Gordon. So going there, and then afterwards, you're making your bones in radio and you keep on going. This is actually a little bit of a curiosity, and it's probably kind of a silly question, but do you feel like possibly because even though you're a fan of the Yankees and the Knicks and St. John's, do you feel like being a fan of the Miami Dolphins kind of maybe hindered you in any way, shape, or form, not rooting for a football team in New York?
I think it kind of gave me a different perspective. I mean, the airwaves are littered with Jet fans. Look, I think if I were a Jet fan, I could bring something different to the table. But the fact that I'm not a Jet fan, I think absolutely brings something to the table. And the fact that I'm a Dolphin fan allows me to kind of give you a perspective of someone who knows what you're going through without going through it with you, and actually happy that you're going through the pain that you're going through. So I think that it actually gave me a unique perspective. I don't think it held me back in any way. I think I don't think that it was that, oh, we can't have this person on the air because they're not a Jet fan. I don't think that the industry generally works that way. I think whatever failures or opportunities that I missed out on, that's on my own abilities or lack thereof for whatever reason. I don't think that not being a Jet fan has to do with it, because you take a look at the airwaves. There's plenty of people that are not Jet fans, not Giant fans. The most popular sports talk radio show of all time, Mike and the Mad Dog. I mean, Mike was more of a Giant supporter because he had a relationship with Parcells, and then when he went to the Jets, he was a more. But he wasn't a Jet or Giant fan per se, and Russo didn't really have a football team, so I don't think that type of stuff holds people back. It's about bringing something unique to the and being knowledgeable enough to know. Not that you're just firing off opinions willy nilly without having any real background. You have to have some knowledge to it. And I was sitting watching Jets and Giants. I mean, talk about suffering for the craft. I'm sitting watching Jets and Giant games every single week for years on end, and not having a rooting interest in either team. That tells you how much I wanted to do this.
Yeah, again, it goes back to your passion. Like, there's nothing that nobody can tell you. I mean, you wanted to do this, and bravo for the career that you've been able to build for yourself.
Well, look, I mean, I've had successes, I've had failures. Right now, I'm looking for a new gig after being let go by ESPN. So I'm not going to paint a rosy picture that go into a broadcasting job or looking for work in that field, that it's all going to be sunshine and roses. There's been ups and downs a lot in an almost 30-year career. So I'm hoping that there's one more up.
I'm very confident in you, Gordon, especially if you've been able to do everything that you have and with the talent that you display. I have no worries about you one at all. I feel like you're going to get on your feet sooner than later. But that's actually a nice segue to get into, because it seems like one of the reasons why people are getting into podcasting, as opposed to just looking at somebody like Joe Rogan and he gets $100 million deal from Spotify and be like, oh, this is going to be the new way I make money. There are people that are doing it, even people that are already in the industry, because radio, let's be honest, radio is a dying industry. It's not what it was. And that's why you have somebody like a big company like ESPN New York that's not even on FM anymore. It's not pivoted to AM. So the whole industry is changing. And I just wonder, like, what's going to be next from here, because like podcasting is one thing, but like it's almost like with podcasting, you have some talented people, but it could cheapen it a little bit because of the reasons I just mentioned before. Whereas I feel like if you really, really were into it, you had to build your bones as far as like radio is concerned. But maybe I'm just coming from a generation. I'm speaking from a guy of a generation that was so used to one medium, and now I got to pivot, even though it's kind of sounds a little ignorant and contrived, considering that I am a podcaster. But it's just the thought process that I had, and I just wanted to pick the brain on somebody that has actually seen it on both ends.
Well, I think it's like any other industry where there's a big surge of people into it originally, and then over time, the talent kind of separates it. The people who are good at it, the people that stick with it, it's almost like the gambling companies, right? Like when the sports gambling first happened, it seemed like there were 100 different companies that burst onto the scene. But then as things go along, some of them go up by the wayside. Some are gobbled up by other industry, other companies and stuff. And then you get to your 4, your 5 that you kind of have now. And who knows, maybe there'll be a funneling down even more. Yeah, I think radio is kind of a dying industry because it's just so expensive to run a radio station. And to run a podcast network is not nearly as expensive. And I think that the advertising dollars are moving that way, and I think the audience is moving that way. Like my kids, my son just got a car. He's going to be 17 the day after Christmas. When he gets into the car, he's not turning on the radio. He's getting his phone and he's plugging it in, and he's listening to his songs or he's listening to his podcast. And look, if anybody, he should be. He was raised with a father on the radio. He should be somebody who's ready to listen to this station or that station, but that's not the way it is anymore.
Well, you could also add that to the fact that, you were a contrarian with your father, and now he's being a contrarian with you. So it definitely runs in the family.
Rotten kids.
Yeah. So also judging from the background of your beautiful office that you got there, you're also a big movie fanatic. I'm a huge movie buff. I got into movies way before I got into sports. I already told you that I'm already starting some acting. I have done some directing, TV shows on YouTube and stuff like that. So I'm getting my thing out there. But this was a huge topic of debate at one point when you were working at ESPN. What is your biggest problem with The Irishman?
Oh, it was terrible. I mean, that was you want to boil down more than that? It was terrible. It was what was it? 4 hours long?
3 hours and 28 minutes.
I mean, it felt like it was 5 hours. It was terrible. It went nowhere. I didn't know what the hell the story was for half the time. I mean, and it was obvious that it was like a Netflix movie and not like a theater release, because somebody in the production team, if it was a theater release, would have went to Martin Scorsese and said, you got to cut this down. We got to whittle this down. We got things to do with our lives. We can't sit here for 3 hours and watch The Irishman. I thought it was terrible. And all the people who told me, "Oh, it's a masterpiece. Oh, it's so amazing," I would ask any of them, have they gone back and watched it again?
Well, listen, if Don LaGreca was in front of me and he was the one that said that he thinks it's better than Casino, better than Goodfellas.
Oh, he's out of his mind. Don has never been more wrong about anything that he's ever said in his entire life than The Irish. If he actually said, I think he did say it was better than Casino. If he said it was better than Goodfellas,
He said it was better than Goodfellas and Raging Bull.
oh, he's out. I mean, he's out of his mind. It's the most wrong thing he ever has said, ever will say. It's a completely ridiculous point. And look, maybe he feels like he has to die in that mountain now because he said it back then. A real sign of human growth would be, you know what? I was wrong. I was talking crazy. That's not true, because that's nuts.
Yeah, no, listen, I think one of the best jokes that I heard when I was watching the Golden Globes or the Oscars at one point, I forget who the presenter was, but they said, hey, Martin Scorsese's in the house. By the way, congratulations on the first season of The Irishman. Because that's what it felt like. It felt like an actual TV series.
I can't tell you the amount of times where I would pause it and then the line would come up and I'd be like, oh my God, there's how much left? Oh my God, there's so much left. And it took so long to figure out what the hell the story was even about. And they had De Niro as like an 80-year-old man trying to play a 25-year-old guy. He looked ridiculous. He looked like the old Duracell commercials where they used to have those wooden robots. He looked like a cyborg. He looked less realistic than like RoboCop. RoboCop looked more human than Robert De Niro did in that movie. That movie was so bad.
Yeah, well, I'm on the same boat as you, where I don't think it was I don't think it was the worst movie ever seen. I've went down that road before, but you're absolutely right that I've never seen that movie ever again.
No, nobody's clicking. That's not going to be back in the top 10 on Netflix anytime soon. Like, it was in the top 10 like the first week it came out, but then after that,
is there any film at all, or maybe a couple of films that you could think about where is universally hated, but you actually find it like you actually love it, like a guilty pleasure?
universally hated? I don't know. I'd have to think. I don't know what's universally hated.
Well, I'll give you a little bit of example just to while you ponder on it. So, The Joker 2 came out, and it was panned by critics all over the
Yes,
place.
I've heard that.
Yeah. Now, me personally, and I get a lot of pushback by this, I didn't hate it as much as everybody else did. Like, I understand it wasn't as good as the first one, and I understand that we live in a society that doesn't like musicals. I actually like musicals, believe it or not, but I didn't think it was as bad as everybody else said it was. But I just listen. At the end of the day, these are just conversations that are fun to have, but you're not always going to win the battle. Like, and Marv bugs me about this all the time, where I argue that Die Hard is not a Christmas movie, and
No, it's not a Christmas. Of course it's not. That's another contrarian type of thing that people are just trying to do to be aggravating. Yeah, no, it's not a Christmas movie. Do they only play it at Christmas? Christmas movies play during Christmas more.
well, here's my biggest argument, and my two biggest arguments. One, Bruce Willis himself even said it's not a Christmas movie, so I'm going to listen to John McClane more than anything.
Right.
And two, whenever I watch it, if I watch Elf, if I watch The Santa Claus, if I watch Christmas Vacation, if I watch Jingle All the Way, any of those movies, I feel like I'm in the Christmas spirit. If I watch Die Hard, I think this is one of the greatest action movies of all time, but it doesn't make me feel like jolly like Santa or anything like that.
Right, and the main theme of the movie has to tie into the spirit of Christmas. That's the point. That's what makes a Christmas movie a Christmas movie. The main thing of Die Hard is blowing people's heads off. You know, like, that's not really in the spirit of Christmas. So no, of course it's not a Christmas movie. That's just, that's one of those things that people like to say, just that, oh, well, cereal is actually like soup, or a burrito is a sandwich, or all those stupid things. No, of course not. They're not. It's ridiculous, and it's not a Christmas movie. No, but you're talking about bad movies. I did recently see the movie Trap, which is the new M. Night Shyamalan movie.
I'm not even kidding you, Gordon. I saw that this morning for the first time.
Oh my God. And people told me that it was terrible. and they told it to me it was terrible so strongly that it actually made me go see it. I was intrigued to see, like, if they just said, it's okay, I would never have seen it. But the fact that they were so adamant about how terrible it was made me go and watch it. And yes, they were right. It was terrible. It was laughably ridiculous. The entire plot was stupid. It was horrible.
I'll say this: it had me for the first and the second act, but then the third act, it completely lost me.
Oh, another movie where I was watching watching the line of, oh my god, this has how much more to do here? Oh, it's ridiculous. And the man talk about the fact that M. Night Shyamalan is still allowed to make movies at this point. Like, he had one, no questions asked, superstar, great plot twist, all time classic. I recently showed it to my kids. It still holds up. It's fantastic. Since then, he has not done a single really good thing. He's had a couple of movies that are like, that's all right. And it's clear he is out of ideas.
I mean, I felt like, not to spoil it for anybody, but at the same time, I don't give a shit. I just felt like Trap was just nepotism.
Oh, absolutely. My daughter wants to be a singer. I'm going to make a movie where she's the singer, and she's just the singer the whole time. There's no reason why the singer is still in the movie at this point, but for some reason the singer is still a part of the plot. It was stupid.
That's where it lost me. Now, it's funny because the premise is not bad. It's actually not a bad premise on paper, but the execution was just even worse.
They should have crumpled up the paper and then throw it. I'll say this: I'm interested to see him what he does next, because I can't believe that there could be a series of a story where the next movie is worse than the last movie. That's how bad Trap was.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I certainly have better things to do with my morning, but watch that movie. No, but I'm trying to think if there's another film out there that people universally don't like, but I happen to find it very charming, or there's something about it that I like.
I don't like things that people generally are goo goo gaga over. I can't say that there's one that I feel like is underrated.
Well, one thing I will say is that I know that The Godfather is looked at as the greatest movie of all time, but for me, that's like when people say, oh yeah, I read the Bible. They just go for the easiest low-hanging fruit there is. Now, do I like The Godfather? Yes, but is it the greatest movie I've ever seen? Not so much.
Really? I think that it definitely belongs in the conversation, just because you can always go back to it, and the depth of that movie, every time, even now, I've seen it hundreds of times. And this was a lesson my mother always taught me. The Godfather really gets better every time you watch it, because every time you watch it, you pick up a little something different. And that's kind of true of Goodfellas. Like, I've been showing my son a bunch of movies, and Goodfellas was one of the last real classics that we have to watch. So we finally got around to watching that one. And it's another one where the decisions that Scorsese made and just different little aspects of the movie that always have me kind of, I wonder why he did that. I wonder why he did this. There's always little things that pop up that just has such depth to it that you always pick up new things every time you watch it.
Now, just out of curiosity, because I'm such a huge movie buff, right now I can only really see from my screen the Jaws behind you, and I can't really look at everything else that you have.
Well, this is King of Kong, which was a documentary about two guys who were battling for the world high score in Donkey Kong. Probably came out in 2007, 2008. It's one of the most fun documentaries I've ever seen. This one's Out of Sight with George Clooney. I just like the poster, J-Lo with Clooney's, I do feel like that's kind of a very underrated movie. And I wouldn't say it's a perfect movie, but it's very, very close. The other two that I have up are Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, which is probably my second favorite Quentin Tarantino movie. That's one thing that I know Don and I both agree on. We feel like that's the second favorite of all time. And then my other one is Shaun of the Dead.
Okay. Oh, I love Shaun of the Dead.
Shaun of the Dead is a perfect movie. You might not like it, but in terms of a story, it's perfect.
No, I agree. I do love Shaun of the Dead very much. And back to reiterate what Don said, he said that it is his second favorite Tarantino movie, but it's close. Give it some time and it might become number one.
Yeah, I don't know if it'll ever become number one for me, but I could see that. In terms of I'm a big one on rewatchability.
Rewatchability is a huge factor.
Yeah.
See, like Raging Bull, great movie. I can't watch it a second time. It's just too much. It's too Saving Private Ryan, great movie. Should have won the Oscar. No questions asked. I can't watch it a second time. It's just too heavy. It's too, just too much. But no, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. That I mean, in terms of reps, and of course Jaws. I always say Jaws is the most watched movie we've all watched the most times, whether we know it or not, because it's been on some channel somewhere every single week since probably 1977. So you've seen, even if you're just flipping past and you only see it for 10 minutes, everybody has seen the movie that you've seen the most in your lifetime has to be Jaws.
Yeah, no, I've definitely seen it, and I haven't even seen any of the sequels, but I don't feel like I need to.
No,
I
you
feel
don't
like
need
Jaws. I feel like Jaws is a perfect movie. I think that Back to the Future is a perfect movie.
Perfect movie, absolutely, no question.
That is one movie should never be remade. And we don't know. I'm not even going to put that negative energy out there because you know how Hollywood is, but never touch that movie. It's perfect just the way it is.
Yeah, no question.
Right. So I think we also found another footing here besides sports, but we're also like really big movie buffs. So I feel like we could have conversations like this all day. I kind of wish Marv could join in this conversation because we can go all this all day. Like,
no, Marv already said that Die Hard's a Christmas movie, so Marv's out. This is no good. Marv he's got to have to really pick up the game from this point because the first point, no, not good.
Hey, Gordon, all I'm going to say is when they popped that safe, or the vault, rather, when they popped that vault, what music was playing? The money's falling out the sky like snowflakes.
Yeah.
Ode to Joy. I don't know who. Yeah, I don't know who. Is that Wagner? I don't know who the composer is.
I just think that song says enough about, whether it's a Christmas movie or not. When they pop the safe, it's like snowflakes, the money's falling out the sky. It is like, that puts me in the Christmas spirit. I don't know.
Well, if they're not playing it more often during Christmas, that's a sign it's not a Christmas movie. Like you'll see Die Hard on all the time, but you won't see Elf in the middle of summer.
We might have to do a survey because I do believe that Die Hard gets played at least more often during the holidays.
But Gordon actually made a good argument earlier where I feel like the majority of moviegoers have just been contrarians and just say that it is a Christmas movie because that's the new thing to say now, like it's a new wave. But that's what's so great about having these conversations that at the end of the day they're meaningless, but they're a hell of a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree.
As a matter of fact, I don't know if you'd be interested in this, Gordon, but there is an episode that me and Marv did with two other podcasters to debate if Die Hard is a Christmas movie. I think it's worth a watch.
All right. I have something to do later this evening then.
Nice. So before we put a cap on this episode real quick, going forward with the, back to our sports fans, going forward, how do you see it going with the Yankees, the Dolphins, and the Knicks?
Oh, God. I mean, it's almost Thanksgiving, so let's not talk about the Dolphins. The Dolphins it's the same team for 40 years. It's not going anywhere. And whatever the most detrimental thing to the Dolphins, that's what the Dolphins will do. So, like this year, they had a path where, you know what, the season's over. They're not going to make the playoffs. Hey, at least get a really good draft pick out of it. Maybe you fire the GM and you get somebody who knows what they're doing. But no, they'll win a bunch of meaningless games. They'll be in the worst possible spot, right in the middle. Where they won't make the playoffs and they'll be picking 19th in the first round. So, they're a lost cause. The Yankees are fascinating because everything comes down to Soto. Does Soto come back? It seems like all the talk is that it's the Mets, Steve Cohen. And I really do feel like Steve Cohen has to either step up or put up or shut up. This is the perfect example of a guy who is going to sign somewhere for the most money. All I've heard since Steve Cohen took over the Mets is he's the richest guy. Well, go get Juan Soto. There's no reason why you lose out on Juan Soto. I don't think that I feel like there's this perception that the Yankees have to have Juan Soto back. And if they don't have Juan Soto back, there's no possible way they can build a championship level team without having Juan Soto. That's ridiculous. Of course they can. I mean, the Dodgers won this year. They didn't have Juan Soto, so you don't need to have Juan Soto back. But the problem is I don't know if Brian Cashman is capable of building a World Series caliber team without having Juan Soto in there. I do not trust Brian Cashman's judgment uh, solely on his judgment. Like there's moves that are made that it doesn't really matter about Brian Cashman's judgment, right? Like Juan Soto is one of those kind of players. It doesn't matter. It's not based on Brian Cashman's judgment. You know, Juan Soto's just an amazing top 5 hitter in the sport, so it doesn't matter what Brian Cashman thinks. It's the other moves, bringing in Verdugo or trusting, Glaber to hold down second or trusting Boone. I just don't trust Brian Cashman anymore. So I'd like to see Juan Soto back, if for no other reason to make Met fans miserable so that they can shut up about how much money Steve Cohen has. But I would have to think right now it probably is leaning towards him going to the Mets. But I think the Yankees will still have a good team. I just don't think that there's any real passion to win a championship. It's like, if we win, great. If we don't, oh well. Like the playoffs are a crapshoot. It's funny. I didn't hear about them being a crapshoot this year when they made the World Series, and then when they lost to the Dodgers, I guess they were back to being a crapshoot. I don't know.
This is actually really fascinates me, and it's kind of left field here. What is your fascination with gardening?
I got into gardening because of my daughter. She's really into it. And there's really something cool about like taking a little tiny seed and growing it and getting it to produce fruit. And I don't know. I've definitely caught the bug. Maybe it's just I'm super old and I have to. It's either Civil War, documentaries, gardening. Like there's 5 things that when you get to a certain age that you're allowed to be like passionate about outside of the normal things. So I don't really care about Civil War. I don't really care about some of the other ones. But the gardening thing, I just got into it in the last year or two. And I'll tell you, like one of my highlights of 2024, we went away on a 2-week vacation and we were worried about the garden because we had to have somebody come and water it. We weren't here for 2 weeks. And when we got out of the car and we saw how much the plants grew in that 2 weeks, it really was one of the highlights. I don't lead a very exciting life apparently, but no, it was really, really cool. I've been really, it's a really cool thing. It was not something that I ever thought that I would be into. It was more of like, I'll begrudgingly do this, but then start doing it, you get a little fired up about it.
Yeah, well, part of the reason why I bring that up is because and I'm pretty sure you know about this. I grew up in an era where there's certain things that as men, if we do or we had interest in, it would be looked at as, it was perceived that, let's just say taboo, just to put it mildly. And I actually like this era that we're in right now, where we could be into things and into anything and everything, and we won't be judged for it. Like I remember there was a time where you would get your ass kicked if you were a fan of Star Wars or anime or whatever. Now you could even see the prom king at a high school be the biggest anime fan in the world. I remember there was a time where I would get my ass kicked or made fun of because I like journaling. And, there's just things now that are much open now. We're much more open-minded as a society, that I think it's actually really cool. So who knows? Maybe I might take up something that I didn't think was very masculine going into the future and me appreciating it. I might appreciate gardening. I mean, I'll even tell you right now that, it's not very masculine, but one of the things that I actually favor in life is strawberry cheesecake ice cream. And that's not very masculine at all.
Yeah, it's delicious. Like why? Like there's a comedian who does this bit about like how the fruity drinks that are supposedly not manly, but they're the ones that taste delicious. Like, well, how come I'm not allowed to enjoy the delicious? I have to have a dark stout beer. So it's all about what floats your boat. And the funny thing is about gardening is when my parents first moved here and I was first born, we lived in Richmond Hill, Queens. So we lived in a 2-family house. My aunt and uncle lived downstairs. My uncle was from Italy, and he had like a beautiful garden in the backyard, and he was all about garden. I didn't know anything about it then. I'm 5 years old, but like it's cool to kind of put your hands in the dirt and kind of get back to like I don't know like a prehistoric feel about things, and to see that little thing grow and to see what it's working. Or what, this thing died. I got to try and build. I got to try and grow something else there. It's a lot of fun.
Quick question, real quick. Any interest in podcasting in the future?
I'm not sure. I don't know what my path is going to be in 2025. I've got some things on the griddle, nothing 100%, finalized. I hope that there's going to be opportunities for me, but like this is something that I feel like I need to do. So if it doesn't work out with those other things, it could be a supplement, it could be a full time. I'm not sure, but I could definitely see 2025 including something like.
Okay. Well, I'll reiterate it again, Gordon. I know how much of a talented person that you are. I love everything that you've done. It was always a joy to listen to you on the radio. So a little bit of peeling back the curtain. I have a 9 to 5 and it is truck driving, and I would wake up at ungodly hours, like 3, 4 a.m. in the morning. So during the time when you were actually on air at 5 a.m., you actually got me through my work week and you actually helped me stay awake on the roads, not getting too drowsy or whatever. So you essentially kind of saved my life in a little bit of way. But either way, the point that I'm getting at is I appreciate and love everything you've done as a broadcaster. Getting to know you a little bit more, I know that you're an even better person. And I just really thank you very much for taking the time for my little podcast and, gracing us with your presence and your story.
Please, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. It's been fun talking to you. And if you want to do this again sometime down the road, just make sure it's not cucumber season. Cucumber season, I'm going to be busy. There's a lot of work that goes into cucumbers, man. No, it's just I don't know. That was the one plant that I had that really grew well this year. So we're looking like this was the first year of the garden. So we planted some things. We planted red hot chili peppers, and then we tried to eat them, and they were so freaking hot that we almost passed out because they were so hot. So we're not doing red hot chili peppers again this year, but there's going to be much more of a focus on cucumbers. That's the one thing that gets eaten.
Gotcha. All right. So we're about to close out this episode a little bit, but before we go, I just have one final segment. And this is a segment that I like to call This or That. So if anybody who's never seen the show before, this is just multiple choice questions. It's based off of you can get with this, you can get with that. Shout out to Black Sheep. And I'll just ask you some basic questions I'd ask everybody else, and also tailor some questions around you, multiple choice with each and every one of my guests. And let's start it off with Gordon Damer. And you ready, Marv? You ready, Gordon?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, so here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, for This or That, you, Mr. Damer, playlist or podcast?
Playlist.
Slides or Crocs?
Slides.
Beach or pool?
Pool.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Sports fan, you're always a night owl. Absolutely.
Instagram or TikTok?
TikTok. Oh my God. I got to get a job just so I get off that stupid TikTok.
To give or to receive?
To give.
Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I think I'm probably an introvert.
Batman or Superman?
Ooh, a tough one. Superman, probably.
Iron Man or Captain America?
Iron Man.
Do you call it sauce or gravy?
Great. Well, it depends. Does it have the meat in it? If it has meat in it, then it's a gravy. If it doesn't have the meat in it, then it's a sauce. But usually we have gravy.
Interesting. Are you glass half empty or glass half full?
I am glass half empty, and the glass has a crack in it, and the water is poisoned. But that's just because of my sports fandom.
Would you rather be embarrassed or be afraid?
I don't care about being embarrassed, so I guess I'll pick it being embarrassed. I'm so past the fact. Like, if I go out with my kids and they're like, "Are you going to wear that?" I'm like, "Oh, I've stopped caring." I've worn slippers to Home Depot to go buy something. So I'm way past being embarrassed.
Would you rather be too hot or be too cold?
I cannot ever be too hot.
Okay. Do you prefer the window seat or the aisle seat?
I need the aisle. I'm 6'2". I need that leg room.
Holy shit, I didn't know you were that tall.
Yeah.
Book smart or street smart?
Neither.
Do you prefer reading or writing?
I prefer reading.
Lamar Smith or OJ McDuffie?
Well, Lamar Smith was a big factor in the last playoff win that we had. But, I mean, in terms of a career, it would be OJ McDuffie.
Don Mattingly or Tito Martinez?
Don Mattingly. Don Mattingly I have pictures in my house, multiple places where Don Mattingly still has pictures in my house.
Dan Marino or Joseph Castelli?
Joseph Castelli? Who's that?
He's the one who invented the surf and turf.
Dan Marino. Although Dan Marino has ruined more people's lives than he knows about by making them Dolphin fans, but still.
Yeah, I was a little. I thought you would appreciate that surf and turf thing.
Yeah, it's very good. Good research.
Ice water or room temperature,
Oh, Ice War.
and then finally teamwork or solo project.
Solo project. Leave me be by myself.
All right, nothing wrong with that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to do it for this or that, and that is going to do it for this episode of First Class Second Place. Thank you so much to my guest Gordon Damer for coming through here. Thank you so much. Anybody you want to give a shout out to really quick before we close out?
Well, Kai Williams is the guy who kind of put this together, so big shout out to Kai.
And tell us once again where they can find you on Instagram, TikTok. You know, even though you got to get you off of TikTok, but where can they-
Yeah. Oh my God, that thing! You just keep scrolling and scrolling. It's just like 6 hours later, just scrolling. You can get me on TikTok, Old Man Radio on TikTok, and then at Gordon Damer, GordonDamer on Instagram and X.
All right. Thank you so much, Gordon. I really appreciate it. And we'll do this again sometime. And ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at I am Jason Enrique on all social media platforms. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube at Jason Enrique. Thank you so much for tuning in. We will see you next week. This has been the First Class Second Place podcast. We out.